Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected.
INEC declares Bola Ahmed Tinubu winner of 2023 presidential election.
Do not truncate electoral process, federal government, replies former President Obasanjo.
Senate reconvenes, cautions against obstruction of electoral process.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the outcome of the 2023 presidential elections.
It's a new month, and it comes with a new president-elect and vice president-elect of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
If you're just waking up, you're right on time for the breaking news that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has declared Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress winner of the 2023 presidential elections.
Well, this followed a long-drawn process of collation that lasted all night till the wee hours of today, when results from all the states were collated and tabulated for the final result.
And then at about 10 minutes past 4 this morning, the Chief Returning Officer for the presidential election and Chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakubu, declared that Bola Tinubu, having scored the highest number of votes and satisfied the requirements of the law, is returned president-elect, and his running mate Kashim Shettima as vice president-elect.
Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the APC polled 8,794,726 votes to defeat his closest rival, Atiku Abubakar of the PDP, who polled 6,984,520 votes, while Peter Obi of Labour Party polled 6,101,533 votes. Rabiu Kwankwaso of the New Nigerian People's Party trailed with 1,496,627 votes.
Well, that's more of a margin of about 1.8 million between Bola Tinubu and the runner-up Atiku Abubakar. The INEC chairman has already announced that a certificate of return will be issued to the president-elect and vice president-elect at 3 p.m. today, Wednesday, at the National Collation Center in Abuja, which is also the International Conference Center.
It's been celebration galore in the camp of the APC, precisely at the APC Presidential Campaign Council Secretariat in Abuja, where supporters and chieftains of the party danced in victory, and the President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu gave an acceptance speech.
So today on Good Morning Nigeria, we shall focus on the outcome of the presidential election. And of course, matters still arising. We must note that before the final declaration, there were protests by other candidates and their parties. Some of them had also staged a walkout at the coalition venue. What do all of those matters amount to at this stage? My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I welcome you to today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
And I am Nigerian Umayo. Thank you for joining us on our flagship breakfast show, reaching you live on the network service of the NTA. We'll be bringing you newspaper review, business news, sports, and of course foreign tidbits as part of today's package. For now, let's join Ann Jibono, who has the Good Morning News highlights. Hello, Ann.
Hello, Kieran and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here's the news. Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress has been declared winner of the 2023 presidential election at the conclusion of collation of presidential election results from the 36 states and the FCT. The Chief Collation Officer of the 2023 presidential election and Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, declared Tinubu and his running mate Shettima as President-elect and Vice President-elect.
Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. But there is another responsibility were required to discharge by law. The issuance of the certificate of return. We have another election in under 2 weeks, the governorship and state assembly elections. We have therefore taken the decision that the certificate of return to the president-elect and the vice president-elect will take place here at 3 p.m. today.
Meanwhile, the president-elect and candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has promised to work hard with Nigerians to actualize Nigeria's aspiration for greatness. Bola Tinubu made this promise in his acceptance speech following the announcement by the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, who declared the ruling party's presidential candidate winner of the Saturday, 25th February 2023 presidential election. We apologize for that hitch. President Muhammadu Buhari heartily congratulates the winner of the 2023 presidential election, the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Reacting to the results announced this morning, President Buhari said, and I quote, "I congratulate His Excellency Bola Ahmed Tinubu on his victory, elected by the people. He is the best person for the job. I shall now work with him and his team to ensure an orderly handover of power." The election was Africa's largest democratic exercise in a region that has undergone backsliding and military coups in recent years. This election demonstrates democracy's continued relevance and capability to deliver for the people it serves, unquote. The federal government has urged former President Olusegun Obasanjo not to willfully truncate the 2023 general elections with his inciting, self-serving and provocative letter on the elections. In a statement issued by the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, the letter by the former president, the minister said, was cunningly framed as an appeal for caution, but is nothing than a calculated attempt to undermine the electoral process and a willful incitement to violence. Lai maintained that what is expected from a self-respecting elder statesman at a period like this are words and actions that douse tension and serve as soothing balm, not to promote anarchy. Meanwhile, the coalition of three opposition parties, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, the Labour Party, LP, and the African Democratic Congress, ADC, had earlier called for an outright cancellation of the 25th February 2023 Presidential and National Assembly election. This was at a joint media briefing in Abuja.
We are challenging the very process because it fundamentally violates not just the law, but the electoral procedures which are derived from the Electoral Act.
The failure to comply with the provisions of the Electoral Act and the guidelines makes it imperative that all results recently uploaded to the IREF portal be audited before they are announced.
Also earlier on Tuesday, the vice presidential candidates of the Labour Party and that of the People's Democratic Party demanded the cancellation of the 2023 presidential election results on the grounds of alleged irregularities and non-compliance to aspects of the Electoral Act on beavers and electronic transmission of results. This was at a joint press briefing by both parties in Abuja.
So the failure to upload results and follow the procedure set out in paragraph 38 of the manual made pursuant to the Electoral Act 2022 is a fundamental breach.
Well, that's the news for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Kieran and Kingsley after this break. Please stay with us.
Yeah, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. Now time for business, and we'll bring in Kunle Ade for details.
The federal government is still on course to pull 100 million Nigerians out of poverty, while subnational governments, through various intervention programs, are also striving to gainfully engage the people. Development experts are saying embracing micro, small and medium enterprises is the way to go. They emphasized that economies of developed nations depend on the viability of MSMEs.
We're going to give full support. I announced that there will be a winner category. There will be cost medal and award for that particular category. And then we'll also assist winners in the area of agribusiness to access our matching fund loan at single-digit rate. And those in the furniture category can use our facility at Idu. We have a common facility for furniture makers. At least they can use it free for a year. Entrepreneurs will have access to use it for a small fee.
They said the present status of MSMEs in Nigeria is promoting non-oil exports. With business news, I'm Kunle Ade.
Coming up next for us now is Newspaper Review.
All right, and we have Chukwudi Ukoli-Waja here with us for today's newspaper review on Good Morning Nigeria. Chukwudi, it's good to see you again. You're welcome.
Good morning, Karian, on Good Morning Nigeria. Hello, Kingsley.
Good to see you.
Same here.
That's right. Well, the leadership front page, of course, leads with the story of the election of Bola Ahmed Tinubu as President-elect of the Federal Republic and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Now, it's a bit of an exaggeration because we don't run a monarchy. It says king at last. That is that's the kicker for the headline, King at last, Tinubu's long journey to president. APC candidate wins 25% in 30 states, scores 8.8 million votes, and that's a good approximation. Lawyers squabble over state status of the Federal Capital Territory. Mahama, that's former president of Ghana, Jonathan, former Nigerian leaders, and others called for calm as PDP and Labour Party kick. And 2023 elections, winners and losers, what Nigerians expect from new president. Obese rise, what next for Atiku? These are special features. And then above the name flag of the leadership newspaper, no electronic transmission of result in electoral act. That's according to Lawan, Senate President. INEC declares Ireti Kingibe winner of FCT senatorial election. Then below the nameplate, Senate in rowdy session over collation of presidential election results. Kirian.
All right, now let's turn to the New Telegraph newspaper from top to bottom. Nigerian bonds drop at opposition boycotts vote. That's continuing a process. That's on page 25. Rivers, INEC suspends result collation over threat on collation officers' life. It's on page 8. World Bank, 91 billion needed to power Nigeria, others by 2030. You get that story on page 6. AU ECOWAS uploaded security management during election. You can get that on page 3. Now, the lead story on the New Telegraph, results, coalition Panava, PDP, LP, ADC, NMPP call for fresh polls. There are writers to that, say INEC compromise integrity of presidential election. Protesters storm Abuja, demand results cancellation, sacking of INEC chair. Call for Yakubu's resignation misplaced. Don't plunge Nigeria into available crisis, Catholic bishops tell commission. As Khan questions why preventable lapses weren't addressed on time by INEC. Now, constitutional crisis looms over eligibility of next president is on page 4, according to the Telegraph. Jonathan Mahama, others advise INEC to address procedural concerns. Say it should comply with electoral law as federal government urges Obasanjo not to truncate electoral process. Ignore OBJ's comments. General Akino Nade tells Buhari, but the Amira Nkire called for calm. I have one presidential poll, says Tinubu, insists he has capacity and strength to defend his mandate, describes Obasanjo's statement on poll as irresponsible. Presidential poll, PDP, LP may forge alliance. The NLC president falls INEC's position on BVAS. No electronic transmission of results in Electoral Act, according to Lawan. You get all that on pages 2 and 5 of the New Telegraph. Let's bring in Chukwudi, who is busy, compiling.
I'm not compiling. I'm rather studying some interesting points here. Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is president-elect, just as Kingsley said. The leadership has an audacious headline there, King at last. And he says, we don't operate in monarchy. But trust papers to drop headlines that would sell. The paper goes on to talk about Tinubu's long journey to the presidency. On January 10, 2022, he was credited with the statement, I'm a kingmaker, I want to be king. Observers would say that Emi Loko has finally transformed into reality, if you ask them. Now, by 3 p.m. today, he and the vice president-elect would get their certificates of return. Now, you mentioned something which might have our friend Kingsley coming in, vociferously, I hope. Now, they are saying that we might have some wrangling over what is constitutional and all that, and they are talking about the provisions of Section 1342 of the Constitution. That's about the 25% you must get, from at least 24 states of the 36 states of the Federation, including Abuja. Now, where people like me would come in is, when these letters of the Constitution are couched, those of us who read language, linguistics to be specific, will tell you that sometimes we feel that legalese engages unnecessary haziness. The conjunction "and" is in contention there. It said "and the FCT." Linguists like me would have said, why didn't you come out clearly and say which must include the FCT and the likes, which must include the FCT, so that you would not have wranglings like this, wrangling like this. But then people who are constitutionalists will tell you that constitutions are couched in language that is peculiar to it. I don't know about defending that, since I'm not a lawyer or a constitution maker. But I think that clarity in communication should begin to come into some of these legalists, very important. Now, if we look at the voting pattern, we said yesterday
why don't we resolve
that would actually be a methodical.
Hear from Kirian.
Yes, Kirian.
Okay, on this issue of the constitutionality of 24 states, 25%, and what have you.
Yes.
I think another clause there is the fact that if you have a majority of the votes cast, that you won the election, which will negate other steps that should have been taken, So my thinking.
Sorry, I don't think, Kingsley, I'm coming in. I don't think that if you have
the highest
number of votes,
cast, yes.
If the catchment mentioned there is not there,
but in this case,
you are not going
but
to
in this case, who won 25% in 24 states in this case?
No, I think that has been met. We're not saying we are saying that the two of them must go hand in hand.
So because I didn't understand, there's no complexity there. I mean, if you there's no complexity because one, he has the highest number of votes. He has won 25% in 24 states of the federation. So clearly, from that declaration, he has won. I don't see any constitutional matter there.
No, I was talking like a language.
Unless Kingsley has a different view on that. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
I should say that the argument about whether the Federal Capital Territory would require a separate score for the eligibility of a candidate to be declared winner and returned elected as president. That argument went back and forth, and some very learned senior advocates also weighed in. But I think that it was just a storm in a teacup, absolutely unnecessary. Now, Chukwudi, I say this with the greatest respect to the senior advocates. Chukwudi, you were talking about the language of law and so on and so forth. That's what is called legal drafting. Legal drafting. That is how you draft laws, how you draft contracts, how you draft documents. Now, there is also what you call interpretation in law. You can call interpretation of statutes or interpretation. And usually these are some of the courses you get introduced to, probably 100 or 200 level. And to tell you how significant that topic is, you also encounter it when you are at the law school. Interpretation, that's to say rules of interpretation. How do you construe a document? The words in the document, the word in the document, and so on and so forth. There are a number of those rules. I won't get into details. Literal rule, judicial generis rule, mischief rule, and so on and so forth. But hang on a second. Just hang on, please. Let me make my point. The issue about Section 134 arose because of, Chukwudi, as you said, the construction of that conjunction. And. Now, the first literal rule is to say, read what that subsection is saying. As part of the requirement, score majority of votes cast in the election, and more importantly, you should score 1/4, which is 25% of the votes cast in 24 states of the federation, 24 states of the federation, and the federal in each of the states of the federation and the Federal Capital Territory. In each, there are eight parts of speech. We know them. Eight. So, when you look at that particular subsection, that clause as it is there, as you are reading it, in each of the 36 states of the federation and the federal capital, it doesn't say in each of the 36 states of the federation and in the Federal Capital Territory. It says and. So the Federal Capital Territory qualifies as a state. So assuming Bola Tinubu scored 25% of the votes in 23 states, or let's say 24 states, without meeting the threshold for the Federal Capital Territory, as it did not meet the threshold for the Federal Capital Territory, it will still have won the election. In other words, there is no requirement in the Constitution for you as a candidate to score 25% in the FCT. There is no such requirement.
I think the point has been made. Yeah? You know, I am not at variance, with his submission on this matter. But my concern is that when you do legal drafting, and after the drafting, you have succeeded in confusing people or introducing complexity in the application of the language, the technicality of the language, they will get confused. And when it comes to interpretation as well, as we know it, lawyers also begin to argue on clauses in the Constitution, on sections in the Constitution. This has been made, and we find it difficult now to know which is the truth. If two lawyers are arguing on a document, on a point that has been established on a Constitution, then that's where we get confused. As non-lawyers, you call it interpretation. How is it interpreted?
In linguistics, we would ask you, where is communication without clarity?
Exactly.
Kingsley says legal drafting and all that,
yes.
And because I don't know the things he knows about the law, I keep quiet. But I'm a communicator, and I'm going to tell you that if you can afford to be clear to the minutest details, why hold yourself back?
See,
it's as simple as that.
See.
And that's natural thinking. It has nothing to do with law.
One of the rules of drafting.
Yes, rules.
One of the rules of legal drafting is clarity.
So
it's clarity. And then hang on. Why are you impatient? I mean, just listen, please. One of the rules is clarity. And if a dispute arises as to the construction, that's to say, how do you, what does this mean? You make your point, I make my point. Then we lay it before a judge.
Who would interpret?
Who will say, and then listen, this is one of the key elementary things, to say, what is the intention? You discover the intention of the legislature. These are elementary. You are a layman, you get confused, no problem about that. But when you approach, it's like you're having fever. You don't know where the fever is coming from. Is it from stomach upset? Yeah. Is it from malaria? Is it from typhoid? You have all kinds. You have all kinds of fever.
You're not going to start a war. You're not going to start a war here. Otherwise, I would say inquiry into intention, occasion by unnecessary hesitancy.
He's talking about clarity. No, he's talking about clarity. He's introducing confusion in the entire thing. You call it clarity. You are arguing among yourselves as which one is properly drafted or not. Among yourselves, so the same lawyers are arguing on themselves with themselves on issues. Exactly. So
makes it more complex.
Because in the drafting, that is where the confusion comes. And the rest of them that apply.
The political scientists not also argue amongst themselves. Hang on. There is no linear perspective in politics. Let's be realistic.
That's true anyway.
Power. There's no linear perspective to power. Let's be realistic. The laws of power. There's nothing. You cannot say. That's what my main point is that the argument over Section 134 was unnecessary, irrelevant, because the Federal Capital Territory is regarded as a state for that particular purpose. To say, I use. You talked about the conjunction. Yes. I also brought in the preposition.
Yes.
You
brought in the preposition in,
because that in doesn't appear after the and.
That's true.
That's what these are the literally, I said, parts of speech.
Yeah.
8 of them: noun, pronoun, adjective, verb, adverb, preposition, article, and then conjunction.
Okay, let's divert to something else. Let's do something else, because Nigerian bonds drop as opposition boycott vote counting process. What does that make? I don't know. You are an economist. Nigerian bonds drop. Yes.
Okay, but Nigeria bombed.
Nigeria bonds. Bonds. B-O-N-D-S.
Okay.
Bonds.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Nigerian bonds drop as opposition boycotts vote counting process.
No, I mean that's something the economists will tell you. You see, in developing countries,
there's no linguistic. No, there's no linguistic.
There's no linguistic.
There's no linguistic.
I'm going to let you do.
No. Let me finish. I will give you the legal perspective of bonds. You are struggling with bonds.
I don't want you to put me in a bond. The point is, in the developed economies, when certain things happen in the polity, it actually affects the economics of the... Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, the bonds they are talking about, don't be surprised that everything will steady up again within a few days.
Yeah.
But you see, when politics sneezes, economics is likely to catch a cold from time to time.
Exactly.
That's the point.
You cannot divorce.
That's the elementary. Elementary linguistic.
One day we must have a shouting match with lawyers.
Okay. All right. Now you want to hear the legal. You want to hear the legal.
You want to this confusion.
But you say you don't understand it. You say to the legal.
Be clearer.
Let's not open your mind. Don't close the other. Don't close. No, I'm talking about Kenya. Don't close the other. The plain language is that the market is responding.
Exactly.
That is the ordinary language. That is exactly. You say you didn't know it.
It's political economy. It's simple political economy. That's the application. That's what if anything that touches politics.
But you say you don't know what
touches every other aspect of our living,
gentlemen,
economically and otherwise.
Okay, you know of stocks, you know of shares, you know of bonds. Okay, now you hear of bonds. I will give you the opportunity to go and read of bonds and so on and so forth, so that you get to know. Let me tell you. You see, Kenya keeps complaining about law. Law is the foundation for bonds. You can't just wake up and say you are issuing bonds. It's security. It's security. That's why you have, for instance, in Nigeria, you have the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's governed by law. But let's maximize the time.
There's nothing you can do without law.
Yeah, let's
nothing.
Let's maximize the time, and then of course we'll get back to more serious issues. You see, the market is reacting.
Exactly.
But there's also the issue that has not been addressed, and the urge is for those who are aggrieved to adopt the grievance redress procedure. To say, because you see, PDP, Labour Party, and I think the AAC, they walked out of the collation center, and their grievance is that, in their opinion, there has been no compliance with the procedure prescribed by law for the collation and declaration of the presidential election results. Now, distinguished Senate President, he said, no electronic transmission of results in the Electoral Act. Yeah. I don't know which section of the Act is quoting. I hope it's been reported accurately. They said the common view is that upload the results from the polling units. That would then build the building blocks. That would then be the building block for the pyramid of results you are going to get at world level, local government level, state level, and then the National Collation Center, which is at the ICC. So that has been their grounds. And they are saying that, look, you can't build something on nothing. That if you have not complied with that procedure stipulated by law, not discretionary, then whatever else you are doing. But as you said, these are matters that will always be resolved going forward. That's why they have said, look, if you haven't done that, the results you are announcing, they don't amount to anything.
The interesting thing is that the people who walked out, the people who are dissenting, have not categorically mentioned voter fraud. The fraud anywhere. No, they are talking procedure. So I'm sure they will iron it out. But gentlemen, I noticed something.
But you know, again,
I noticed something.
Let me, just pause.
It's okay.
You see, fraud, proof of fraud is different from non-compliance. Proof of it is different from proof of non-compliance with procedural steps stipulated in a piece of legislation. Okay. To prove fraud, an allegation of fraud is a different. It's a different step that you will take. And then it's more tedious, to be honest with you.
My view is that dissenting voices that walked out ought not to have done that. That's my own personal opinion. If you notice, if you notice any misgivings, in the administration of the process, you put it on paper and they present it to the INEC, which INEC chairman did say. Now, we are just being verbal, verbal complaints, right? You have not received anything officially. To say, look, these are the points that you have raised, that you think he should review. And he said, too, that there's a provision for a review. So if they didn't write to INEC or officially complain to INEC, then there would be no need to, start making all this noise after the election.
In 1 minute, yesterday we mentioned the voting pattern and we mentioned young people. Trust Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I read in one of the papers that his government would introduce loans and credits to students. The man is already thinking ahead. Because towards 2027, courting the young voters is still going to be a major consideration for all the parties. I don't know what steps they're going to take,
let me also raise this point. I think it could be of special interest at some point going forward to analyze and therefore decompose the voting pattern in the Federal Capital Territory. For some election cycles, you have seen the Federal Capital Territory vote against the ruling People's Democratic Party, against the All Progressives Congress.
Yes,
I'm not quite sure what happened in 2015 and what the numbers are. But Labour Party won in the FCT. Labour Party won. In the APC, it won in Nasarawa. I'm talking about FCT. FCT. Now, I've heard and I've read some snide remarks. They say that, voters in the FCT, they are hurt by the anti-corruption campaign. They no longer have free money. So that is why they are voting against the APC. That, they want the return of the old order. So vote out the APC. And then, I'm sure you would have seen those accounts. Some people said, and even at the villa, that APC lost at the Villa, so Nigerians want them out of that place.
Okay, well, gentlemen, let's close this chapter for now, and reconvene again tomorrow on Newspaper Review. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network Service. We are looking at the 2023 election, the presidential election, which has been declared by INEC earlier this morning. We'll take a short break now. When we return, the program continues. Don't go away.
Sportybet sponsors coverage of the Italian Serie A.
The counsel of our fathers.
My advice to these young people is please do not take us back to those harrowing days. You probably do not know what it is.
Nigerian youths, let's build our nation together.
And we thank you for still staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria, broadcast live on the network service of the NTA. Well, as a matter of fact, we have initially introduced our topic for today, and at this point in time, we would like to take a background story put together by Abdulsalam Jubril.
That Tinubu Bola Ahmed of the APC, having satisfied the requirements of the law, is hereby declared the winner and is returned elected. But there is another responsibility we are required to discharge by law: the issuance of the certificate of return. We have another election in under 2 weeks, the governorship and state assembly elections. We have therefore taken the decision that the certificate of return to the president-elect and the vice president-elect will take place here at 3 p.m. today.
Announcement has been made that I have been elected the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is a serious mandate. I hereby accept it. To serve you, be your servant, and not be your leader.
All right, that was the backgrounder, and thank you very much, Abdulsalam Jibril, for that backgrounder. With us in the studios now to discuss issues around the outcome of the presidential election, let's welcome Ene Obi. Ene Obi is the convener, Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, and country director of Action Aid. She's a regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria. Ene Obi, we're glad to have you this morning.
Glad to be here. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, and then we also have in the studios here Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, who is head of Department Mass Communication at Base University in Abuja. Prof, we're glad to have you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Also in the studio here is Hamzat Lawal, convener, co-convener, Not Too Young to Run Movement, and Chief Executive, Connected Development Code. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right, and we also have Ebere Ifendo. Ebere Ifendo is the President, Women in Politics. Madam, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're glad to have you. It's a brand new day, brand new month. And those who are just waking up, they, of course, now have heard the news of president-elect and vice president-elect. And many will say, done and dusted, but several others will also say, there are still some issues. Let's begin with NLD.
Kingsley, what can I tell you? You know, I want to praise the resilience of Nigerians. I really love to be a Nigerian, you know, because going into this election, some of the things that we had anticipated, the roughness of the environment, you know, because of the issue of the cash trap or cash swap, whatever it was, and then scarcity of fuel. Nigerians were buying fuel 420, you know, naira per liter, and all of that. And we still went into this election, you know, and people were able to, you know, massive turnout. But whether everybody that turned out voted is another thing. There is a threshold, you know, from the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room. We had a pre-assessment of the environment before going into the election, and some of the things that we raised some hotspots. We also raised the standards. We had a bit of a clue, and we talked to the INEC chairman about the issue, the credibility of the election, the freeness, because for Situation Room, we are not worried about who wins, but we're worried about the process. Who wins the process is as important as who wins the election. And so, when you come out and we got the promise, now we thought we're running a technology, you know, a high-tech environment in terms of the election. And so we went into this election with the hope that as we go into it, that at the end of the polls, one of the demands is that you upload, you have the result, pasted, you know, after you paste it on the wall, and also give it to party agents, because it's not only INEC that is computing, you know, the details of the election. The essence of having representatives of the political parties is to ensure that they get the real result, and it's also uploaded. And we asked the INEC chairman, will you upload? Up until this moment, the INEC chairman has not come out to tell Nigerians, you know, one of these things, because there is a benchmark, there is a standard that was set for the election. INEC chairman has not talked about what happened to the portals. For us, we failed, so you can see that, you know, the standard that was set was not met. In terms of logistics, we're worried about logistics. Logistics, as at 8:30 in the morning on the election day, you know, you had, from the observers that we deployed, about 30% of ad hoc staff got to the environment of the voting. Many people were still, even as at 2:30, some people had not reached, you know, some ad hoc staff had not gotten to the environment. And the way we had the preparation towards the election, we thought we were going to have one of the best elections. We need an audit, one of the audit of the polling units, because we went into this election with 176,606 polling units. How many polling units were, you know, were election conducted? By now, we should have an audit, a quick audit, because you know, you conducted the election, you should have that. And so we're coming, and the logistics was there was a lot of shambles. I remember that the president of the Nigerian Labour, the former president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, Ayuba, you know, Wagba, you know, called as at 12 o'clock, you know, their own polling unit in Borno. This is Borno now. You know, they had not received the ad hoc staff, but until about 1:03. And this is an election that by 2:30, you know, 2:30 it should be ending, you know, but they were just starting at that time. You know, it is important to note that the processes that are followed, and when you come, it's like, you know, we can declare from our own side that this election lacks the kind of credibility that we want. Okay. But Nigerians are very, very strong people, and we want to appeal for calm. We feel that is below the standard that we had expected, you know, but we appeal for calm because Nigerians are beautiful people, and we encourage calm, and but there are heroes in the election, and so there are so many things that will take up.
Okay. You have really raised a very pertinent point, with respect to the process of the election, which held on Saturday. Now, let me come to Hamzat Lawal, because this election was perceived as, an election that was driven by the younger generation of Nigerians, who actually we came out, to vote in all parts of the country. And of course, this is the result of what we have. I want to get to know your own assessment of the entire scenario that played out between Saturday and early this morning.
Well, for us, we deployed a platform called Usabe with 20,000 observers across the country, mostly young people. And what we emphasized was, and when we recruited our observers, was to ensure that they live around their neighborhood and they can also cast their ballots. It was really exciting in the morning of the elections when we got report from different polling units that a lot of women and young people came out, and people with disability. It was really exciting. The atmosphere was really encouraging. First, in the early hours, we recorded failure in some cases of the beavers, which was rectified in less than 15 minutes. I was in Kogi State, Okene, precisely. I was in my own ward. The beavers failed me for 7 minutes. So the first time when they tried to accredit me, it failed. And they called the technical people. And one smart thing they did, which I actually commended them for, was when the guy was on his way, what he did was to place a call to the, to the officer in charge on ground and gave him instructions on the phone. So that he followed the instruction, and the beavers came up and now verified me, and I casted my ballot in Pogoro Udenku Ward, Okene local government in Kogi State. Afterwards, all the other polling units, because you have polling unit 1 to 7, the beavers started working. Then I traveled down to Abuja afterwards to our situation room. Yes, we recorded a few positive events, and one is commending the security agencies. I remember we released a pre-election assessment report where we highlighted some of the states and areas around the country where, had hotspots. And I also remember on election day, we also had to launch a red alert, calling on the security agency to deploy more men that were needed in some areas to douse the tension of people and calm them down. On election day itself, on Saturday, there are places where we recorded that elections did not hold. And we were glad to hear when INEC chairman said, on Sunday election would commence. But as I speak to you, there's still places where elections did not hold. And in some instances, some of those places, results were announced. So again, this is a big worry, particularly to my demography, who had put their trust in the process. You see, for us, we're not concerned about the results, but it is the process. If the process has integrity, then the legitimacy of the outcome will not be questioned. And we don't want an instance where young people would go on the street and protest. No. We've experienced a protest that is dark in our history as young people, and we don't want an instance where people would mobilize and go on the street just to air their grievances. So for us, again, we were really excited because of technology and beavers. But the fact that results were not readily available, uploaded, and readily available for stakeholders, both political stakeholders, civil society, observers, and even the media, puts a dent on INEC. See, INEC got about 305 billion naira for this election. And these are taxpayers' money. These are tax from you and I and young people out there striving to have a better country. So we must ask these very important questions. That security agencies played their role diligently. Civil society played their role. The media played their role. INEC cannot afford to fail us. We don't want a country where legitimacy will be hanging in the head of the person who has gotten, support from the electorate. So as a young person, particularly who's big on technology and who represented demography, these answers must be provided to us.
Hamza, thank you very much for the points that you have raised. I want to bring in Ebere Ifendu now, women in politics. And And one point has to do with the frequent reference to process and procedure and the apparent lapses that were there. Are Nigerians scapegoating INEC?
No, I don't think so. I think I will start from where Hans has stopped, talking about some places that we are still expecting that elections will hold and results are already out. I would say categorically here that my community is also affected. Abia State, Abia North, my community, Abuja in Abriba, and Ohafia local government, Aruchukwu and the rest, and already they've announced a winner. I think this is very wrong because people traveled all the way from Abuja, Lagos, and the rest to go to my village to participate in the elections, but they are still
announced winners for the National Assembly elections which took place simultaneously, or for which of the elections?
Yes, the National Assembly.
The National Assembly.
National Assembly. So this is, a big concern to us. And then women also, like you asked about, Nigerian women. Following, the report and everything, you could see that for the first time we saw a huge percentage of women, more than we used to, because we gave everyone assurances that everything will go right. There's going to be, transmission of results. It's going to be free and fair. It's going to be violence-free. We made all those, commitments to Nigerian women and encouraged them to go out to vote. Sadly for us, from the reports we are getting, we lost a woman in Edo State. We also had a woman brutalized in Lagos. And thank God for her, being that brave. After getting first aid, she went back to cast her vote. And then in other areas also, we saw a video of young girls, coppers in Rivers State. So these are a very huge concern to us. The more we encourage women to participate in politics, the system will always find a way to deter us from doing that. And this is not good for Nigerian women. And I want to also talk about, some of our women that got elected. And then we also have some that lost their seats. And then, if you lose your seat from a process that everyone accepts, you will feel good. But when you're losing from, an election that we are still questioning, there's an integrity questions around the elections that even NDI and IRI observer team issued a very damning report. I think it's very sad for us because I actually thought we've passed this stage where after elections, we'll all be rushing to the court again, because that's exactly what is going to, be happening very soon. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Professor Adeni, let's look at the role of communication in all of this. I've listened to some guests in some other programs, not just on NTA and other channels, where persons were saying that, look, there was no effective communication between INEC, party officials, during the process. Because when Beaver's uploading of results from polling stations failed, INEC did not respond in terms of communicating to say, look, we are experiencing some glitches here and there with respect to uploading. They give us some time that it could be remedied and what have you. And I've also listened to the INEC chairman on one occasion, shortly before the other parties staged the walkout during the collision, to say that, look, that our engineers are already working hard to see whether they can, restore the line for us to now get our results uploaded and what have you. So what, in your opinion, happened in terms of communication during this process?
Yeah, well, sometimes we are want to see communication as an intangible, and of course when something is an intangible, we tend to undermine it, we tend to underrate it, either at the level of the individual or at the level of the organization, the agency, or even government, as the case could be. In this circumstance, of course, it was obvious that there were limitations, there were inadequacies, because there's a sense in saying that sometimes when you provide information where your messaging is right, you're able to lubricate the system, you're able to calm down nerves, you're able to thaw margin pressure, in the circumstance of the election, it was very obvious that it came, the explanation from INEC came a little too late, and maybe the channel was also problematic. A statement sometimes can be inanimate, you just throw it out there. There was nobody to provide instantaneous, immediate explanation. Maybe in a situation where journalists might probably want to ask questions. If that had happened, if there was a system, to provide information perhaps on an hourly or a 2-hourly or a 3-hourly base, it will have helped to some extent the rising suspicion around the time the problem around the beavers was emerging. And do not forget, we're in a system where there's a huge trust deficit between the leaders and the led, even amongst the people. In that situation, everything had to be done, to provide information, to get the messaging right, so that you would not do anything that would further affect the deficit already existing in trust among these sections of the populace, But again, and that's what probably contributed in leading us to where we are. But the point also has to be made. The election is a very, very emotional, very emotive affair, can be very stressful, very draining on the psychology of the citizens, and of course it takes a lot away from processes and procedures in governance and societal process, whether in the economy, in the educational sector, in the health sector, because for a moment, the imaginations of the people are captured over time, and you are waiting, until the outcome, however it pans out. So our case was not different. That was probably what we went through. And of course, in a very close election like this, the tension was definitely higher than it was. And that's why we expected INEC, to be above board, like Caesar's wife. Unfortunately, we couldn't mark them all over in the criteria probably set for them in the area of technology. Remembering that technology was gradually being introduced into the election, to reduce human contact, with the process and probably enhance credibility. We've seen this happen in the last couple of years, and we're growing in that regard. So we expected that this was going to be the icing of the cake, the consolidation process, where we will say, yes, we have finally arrived. But it is what it is at the moment. Election can be very strenuous everywhere in the world. I've said it can be very, very difficult. Hardly can you have a perfect one. But the fact that you cannot have a perfect one does not mean that you shouldn't have one that is above average. In the circumstance, it just seems that, yes, we have fixed all the jigsaws around our election, but some pieces are still missing. And those pieces are reflected in this one. Maybe 1 or 2 pieces missing. One piece that is significant, which represented a window that INEC provided for criticisms to come in, is the fact that they were not able to upload results onto the server. And it has become a creditable angle, legitimate angle, where people are coming in from. So, but where do we go from here? Where do we go from here, considering the cost, the strain, and how draining it can be, not just on the individual psychology, but at the macro level of the society, as the case could be.
Professor Adeni, thank you very much. Where do we go from here? We'll come back to you so that you weigh in on where we go from here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, in some otherwise seamless systems, by this morning we would have heard of the concession speech, and then also would have read the acceptance speech. Of course, the concession coming before the acceptance. What we have read and heard so far is the acceptance speech by the president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the grounds of at least 2 of the parties that, 3, if not 3 now, of the parties that scored well over 1 million in the votes, that grounds remains. And the grounds has to do with the procedure of not uploading the results real time at the close of voting at the polling units. What do we know from this civil society situation room as to what might have gone wrong? Yesterday on Good Morning Nigeria, my colleague Kira and I were on set, and I was saying, look, yes, I'm not an IT person in INEC or elsewhere. Did the system just fail, or the system was a victim of an attack, either within or outside the country, and therefore, of course, a national security issue? to say, because we have had, I mean, interferences in elections from trans-border elements and so on and so forth. Otherwise, all of these agonies would not be there, and the lamentation by Hamzat in the meantime would not have arisen. What do we know at this time that might assuage us? Were we just collective victims, or there were persons who probably were just finagling with the system?
I think the word that you brought out here is a lot of lamentations and also collective victims of the system. You set a standard, and I remember at the peace accord which you umpired. At the peace accord, INEC made us to understand that they were very ready for this election. And for me, I saw a lot of confidence. I wouldn't be that confident when you have other things that are responsible, are beyond you. One was that the issue of the central bank, getting the sensitive materials on the day of the election, or the day before the election, which should have been Thursday. You collect sensitive materials on Thursday. Anything short of that will run into a cascading effect. But they were so confident. As at 12 noon, about 13 states alone got everything they wanted. The money that the central bank promised them. And the issue of communication, which Prof talked about. You are not communicating with the people. You are not the holder. You are not CBN. You may have gotten your people ready. They are ready to collect, the money and whatever they have, though the money was just about 20%, and they are not getting it. If you are also, you have an attack, do you keep it to yourself? I'm not INEC. I'm not the chairman. Who is the person who is supposed to tell us our server has been hacked or something has happened? So you don't take the burden of the whole Nigeria on you and go into lamentations. So we have no idea what has happened. A couple of weeks before now, even in November, as far back as November, somebody called me and said, look, they are not going to upload the result on IREP portal. They will not, if we don't shout as civil society, they are not going to upload this result. And I said, because the chairman is one of the most approachable persons. We talked to them and all of that. He assured us, and it's on tape, that in real time, okay, you have taken that burden. When it didn't happen, what happened? You owe Nigerians an apology. You need to talk to people because we are here together. All those who contested, they are Nigerians. And so whoever is occupying the position, so we do not have that. We have a number of polling units that no election held, and the results were declared. In Imo, for example, that happened. In a number of places, even for the results that were declared, I think in Jigawa, about 95 polling units never, they had issues. And so you have another report that they gave, about 56, about so many, so you have so many polling units that elections never held. But as Nigerians, there are some beauties, or there's some things that has happened in this election. There's so many lessons to be learned. An Okada rider won an election. The man never printed a poster. He spent nothing.
He had no structure.
And he had no structure. I think the hero of the election is the third force. Is a third force that came, that was taken for granted. We used to have the usual, two force, two parties. But we had a third force because Nigerians spoke out loudly. I think the INEC chairman owes Nigeria an apology. We are granting the civil society situation room because we had a threshold before the election. We are going to grant a press conference this morning, and we will also air our views to Nigerians about, some of the glitches. It fell below, so far below the credibility line, which was expected. But somebody has won the election or whatever, or declared, and we say congratulations. We'll move on. There are ways of approaching it, and we appeal for calm. But I just admire the young Nigerians. They are in their millions that have not been able to cast their votes. We had PVC issue, remember? That many of them were not able to get their PVCs. About 10 million or thereabout could not complete their online registration. And this is a technology age. So when they are following you, for once Nigerians are gaining, are coming close and saying, we believe in they say, because we say the votes will not count, but you just show them that their votes don't count. Why do you place calm on them?
Let's proceed there, madam, and we'll return to you as we make progress. Let me bring in Hamzat once more. You complained of what you saw, because you're also monitoring, and you say you have over 20,000, persons, across the nation who monitored, observed. What are you getting back from them as a kind of a report, from their observation? What are you getting? And have you been able to articulate, the different reports you got from different parts of the country to be able to take a position on the present situation?
Oh yes, and just to also mention, we're part of the Civil Society Situation Room, and we're still analyzing our reports and feedback, and we would also address the Nigerian people. But one of our biggest nightmare right now is the fact that when we started our campaign started first, if you remember, from getting people into the register, particularly first-time voters, which are young people who just turned 18. Our second call was getting them to go collect their permanent voters card, and then getting them out to cast their ballots. Our tagline for the campaign was the fact that INEC had introduced technology. Yeah. And we leverage on that to build back trust, to say, we're a technology-driven generation. If you say that you don't trust the system, at least you can trust technology. And with this BVAS, so mind you also, we invested and sent a delegation to Kenya during the presidential election in November. And our team on the ground met with the INEC chairman and some of his commissioners, where we even had the deliberation in Nairobi, because they also deployed the same technology. And in Kenya, interestingly, they uploaded the results in real time. And so when INEC chairman even came back, he reassured us that we've gone to even learn the experience of Kenya. By the way, it's important to mention that their register is 21 million, though our own register is over 90 million. With over 80 million people with their permanent voters card.
Kind of register we used to have in primary school those days.
Electoral register.
It's electronic.
Yes. So for us, our biggest issue now is, how do we talk to this demography after assuring and reassuring them? Every quarter, civil society organizations have a sit down with the INEC chairman to bring forward issues that are burning, and then he addressed and reassured us. And with that reassurance, we went to the Nigerian people, and particularly young people, and say, see, we have all the reassurance and assurances. I think for me, because I was seated in the hall when the chairman responded and made the statement he made, and said that the process, the fact that the results are not being uploaded would not affect the process. But the way he went about it was a big communication deficit. What I had expected as a leader was even acknowledging that there's an issue. INEC chairman up to now have not acknowledged that there was an issue. And this is where our grievances are coming from. See, we're not saying you're God. It is only God that would never make mistake. But acknowledge and tell the Nigerian people, and particularly civil society, that have taken your word and banked on it and taken it to the public, mobilizing people to support you. INEC have never enjoyed public support like this. Not even in 2015 when we had the transition. If you look at the perception around INEC before this election, it was great. Everybody, market women, even in grassroots community, they were all supporting INEC and had hope for the process. Up to now, the chairman have not said, oh, there was an issue. This was the issue. This is what we have done. We appeal that please still stand with us, So this is not time for arrogance. This is not time to hoard information. We're dealing with the trust deficit here. This is time to raise to the occasion. And nobody is saying that, we are looking for someone to take the fall. No, Nigeria must move forward. But all we're saying is, we don't want a country that lacks legitimacy. We don't want that.
Okay, a leadership, not a country that lacks, as you suggested, this is leadership. But Hamzat, thanks a lot for the points that you have raised. I want to quickly move over to Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, because of the issues on the table. You can see Hamzat is very passionate, and to an extent as well. Are you hacking this conversation?
Yes, somebody is
So
this is an electronics problem.
Yeah. So you are having the point raised. The points raised by NLB, that looks like an e-waste that is causing this, Kirian. All right, so we'll get that sorted out. We're just trying to get some message for this conversation, and that's why you're having that intrusion. I'm coming back again to what Hamzat was saying in terms of dealing with the trust deficit.
Yes.
Dealing with the trust deficit right now, and communicating to millions of young persons and other stakeholder groups who were mobilized. Come out. And all of a sudden, it looks like, from what Hamzat is demonstrating here, they are crestfallen. How do you rouse them again to say, hang on a second, it's all is well?
Okay, thank you, sir. We tend to make this problem about communication most of the time. We tend to think that it's an intangible that can be undermined in processes and procedures. Of course, when we make this mistake, it now strikes us on the face as a tangible, that we should have dealt with in the first instance. That's often the bane of systems, the bane of individuals. And if you look at election, an exercise that is as critical as election, we often talk of the pre-election, we often talk about the pre-election stage, the election process itself, and the post-election stage. In the build-up to the election, like Hamza acknowledged, there was communication, there was trust-building exercise and backed up on INEC, and of course, they gained a lot of goodwill. But again, they now dropped the ball in the election stage, while the election was going on. They dropped that ball, forgetting that yes, everything has to be multi-staged. While you were doing it in the pre-election stage, do not forget that the election stage is also another stage where you have to where you have to up the ante. You shouldn't drop the ball, and of course, in advance of the post-election stage. But again, it is what it is. Do not forget that it's also okay for us to acknowledge the fact that election is a multi-stakeholder affair. That multi-stakeholder we're talking about is not just physical alone. It's also virtual. It's also in the ephemeral, the semi-intangible that I mentioned earlier. And one element of that ephemeral sphere is communication. So communication is also an activity that is very, very important, that you can regard as a virtual stakeholder, in an election process. But of course, we missed it. But that's fine, missed it, unfortunately, very irritating, very disappointing in a critical election like this, and in one, which is passing as one of the closest in the history of this country. Forgetting that, remembering that, in the build-up to election, campaigns were very frenetic, expectations were high level of anxiety, emotionally draining, and of course it was taken for granted that process was going to be transported into the election process and probably into the post-election stage. This kind of election will have necessitated a situation where preparation should have been spick and span, everything clean, everything almost immaculate, so that even if people are going to be complaining, the world around us will now say, okay, we are back at it again. This is the typical Nigerian attitude. But this is not the situation now. People are complaining, and people are not saying, oh, this is the typical Nigerian attitude. People are seeing something to hang on to. But irrespective of the explanation provided, or what we believe in circles, that yes, it was just a window that INEC provided. The results were already announced, at different stages. The only problem was that, an important activity, an important element was not met. And that's why we're having this problem, But where do we go from here? Yes, I mentioned that earlier. It's a difficult one, no doubt, but very unfortunate again. But we have to continue to say that even though many of the party agents will have wished that the process was discontinued so that INEC rectify it before proceeding, I was beginning to wonder that there's this sense in saying that the election itself, was somewhat indicative. The outcome of the result provided some levels of validity, to some expectations, even though it's that many. Because there were so many upsets, so many surprises, pleasant as they were. If the jigsaw, if the piece the piece in the uploading of result to the server had not been missing, this would have been one of the best elections ever in the history of this country. You know, with the misses, you know, the losses in circles, with some people that we didn't expect could ever lose in their domain, losing, you know, and with the triangle of front runners, you know, picking winning states in distant places. Imagine an article winning in Osun, Bola Tinubu losing in Lagos, Obi winning in Lagos, and Tinubu winning in Jigawa. Very interesting map, you know, but of course we are not able to appreciate this now as much as we should have appreciated it because of the controversy that is seemingly drowning these pleasant surprises. But I do know that we have to move forward. You know, yeah, communication is a continuous process. It's not something that should be undermined. You know, if INEC got it right in the pre-election stage, but missed it in the actual election stage, we are moving into the post-election stage. They also still have some work to be done. The human being, the human mind, it's amenable to perceptions, you know, amenable to beliefs, you know, to fixations, you know, and is always available for information. They can take advantage of this, provide more information, maybe apology, like my colleagues have said, you know, apologies, then of course some kind of empirical reasons why you think you can improve on this going forward against the background of our long-held desire, you know, to grow our democracy, you know, through the instrumentality of election. We do know that democracy, election process, you know, it's not necessarily a journey, it's a destination. It's a continuing process. But people want to see deliberate, conscientious effort, you know, at making this improvement. So it wouldn't look as if we want to be giving excuses, as the case could be.
Okay, you mentioned controversies. You know, elections are all about controversies. You got a last election in America, you know, that saw Trump out of power. And what he did, you all know about the Capitol Hill attack and what have you. And so even in the best of democracies in the world, you still have controversies here and there, especially tied to elections, you know. So ours will not be different, just that we're developing and there are own issues, you know, are huge. Now, madam, you know, we are saying this election has been held. The winner has been announced. And we are asking Nigerians to be calm. You are in charge of the women in this country. Are you reaching out to various women organizations, you know, to say, look, take it easy, stay calm, you know, whatever agitation, if anybody wants to proceed to the courts of this country, you may well do so. And let's say stay calm first to avoid any kind of protest. Because, of course, we know that in some parts of the country, like Port Harcourt, women demonstrated and other parts of the country. So what are you doing to ensure that the nerves are calmed, you know, as we proceed in the process?
Yes, we've reached out to different groups already, and by tomorrow the Women Political Participation Group will be having a press conference. The idea is also to get women to understand that if we encourage, you know, people to go out on the streets, we may not be able to control the impact of the protest, especially if it turns out not to be a very peaceful one. You know, women will be affected, you know, more in terms of, you know, if we have our children out there or if we go out, you know, the women that protested in Port Harcourt, at least it was peaceful. They were able to air their views, their opinions, and which is very good. But at the same time, with, you know, the situation right now, everywhere is charged. So I think it's not the right time for anyone to call for a protest. I would suggest that we make use of the judicial process. The problem again is that most people are also beginning to lose, you know, confidence in the judicial system. But there's nothing we can do at this time. At this time, we have to create, you know, every avenue that will ensure that there's peace and stability in the country. I do not want a situation where women will be seen as part of people that will destabilize, you know, the country. But are we hot? Yes, we are hot. Are we expecting that someone should talk to us? Like Hamza said, yes, we are. And I think part of what we should be asking for right now is for the INEC chairman, somebody we'll work with, somebody we have so much respect for. I feel for him because he may have put everything in place, you know, to get the elections right the way he had planned it, and then unfortunately it didn't turn out that way. I mean, as a human being, he should also be able to accept all those mistakes and then ask, for forgiveness from Nigerians. So women are ready to support anyone that is elected in government, but our concern now will be, accountability of promises made, from all the candidates. They made huge promises to women.
You're talking about governance now.
Yes.
So we'll come to that. We're still, as some persons will say, just trying to catch our breath from a very hectic race that we had. Anyway, I want to come back to you. And this relates to process. One of the issues that was always worrisome about our elections had to do with financial inducement of voters. I don't know what your organization, the Situation Room, picked up, but there would appear to have been less visible intrusion of financial inducement to voters. What the factors are, there were a number of arrests that were made by the police, by the ICPC, by the EFCC, before, of course, they could get to the destination point, and then one other person who had a bag, there was a video, and I think there was some cash inside. They attacked him, and then I think these were voters or bystanders, who picked it up. So, did we witness something, or did your Situation Room witness something salutary in the fact that there wasn't the brazen corruption of voters on the voting queue?
Okay. Before I come to the voting, you asked a question. In the first instance, you asked directly about the issue of, acceptance speech and also no congratulatory speech. I think I will want to appeal to the political parties to look at this as a football match, where sometimes you are giving temporary happiness or you are giving a permanent happiness, where at the end of the game, you also move on. That because of the process, they should rise above anything to talk to whoever has won or whoever has been declared to talk to them so that they can heighten that level. But going down, whatever the issues are, again, I think the problem is the courts. We want more elections, credible elections to be pronounced by INEC, not by the courts. Because the courts, the judiciary is on trial. It's been on trial, they've lacked a lot of credibility because now everybody is smiling. People are saying, let's go to the courts. Because the big wigs, those who have big money, have the courts. But what about the courts of the people? Election is the court of the people. And they are interviewing candidates. And when you interview candidates, whoever wins by your score, you also get it. And so some of the indices that we had thought was going to be a big fight, a big struggle, a big challenge for us. For the election, the issue of vote buying was a major one for us because when going through the off-cycle elections, when we went to Anambra, then you come to FCT, and then you go to Ekiti and Osun. Vote buying, they were changing tactics and everything because now the power has gone to the people. And so we are coming into a time when we got to the field this time. I can say that from our observers that we deployed, about 7% was noticed in terms of trying to buy votes. And the agencies also rose. Like Hamza said, the deployment, the IGP made a promise and he fulfilled the promise. But we still hold him accountable for all the areas where there were skirmishes. We hold him accountable for those places because this means there can be an improvement. Remember, there is an election next week, to continue. And so if they can tidy up, because they have the hotspots, places that are hotspots, and they could tackle that. So about 7%, in terms of vote buying, which is remarkable. We had a chance to make this election one of the greatest, one of the best elections, and we were heading for it. The reason I say INEC chairman needed to apologize to Nigerians is all of us for the past 2 years, everybody has been on this election. Mobilization, energy, and you see that the EU, the other organizations, they issue a report. But you were not hearing from the civil society at that point because we were saying, wait, I don't think, is this going on? Is this really going on?
Surreal.
You know, it's like you are going through a dream.
Surreal,
you know,
yes.
we try to, like Hamza pointed out, as members of civil society situation room, we believed, do we not have a right to believe in somebody? We believed in the INEC chairman and trusted in the ways that he was operating, despite people pulling us apart and saying, wait, but we do know that he's human. And that is why if you make a promise, you made a promise to Nigerians that you are going to do this, and you didn't do it, what is the right thing to do for leaders? Leadership is a burden. You lead the good, the bad, and the ugly. If in the INEC office you have people who tamper with things and all of that, in this election, like, you know, an example was, you know, in Imo State, where somebody, you know, some electoral officers came back and said, we didn't hold the election, and we have come to fill the form to resubmit to INEC that election did not were not conducted in so polling unit. But before they knew, they were seeing results. Results were being announced. So I think you have to give it to ICPC, all the agencies that are concerned. Yes, I do believe EFCC was out in their, they even sent us, you know, their hotlines per state. Call this number if something happened. The army also brought out, because in a particular election, I think that was in Anambra, where some INEC officials were taken, they had to open up, the army came in and opened up the corridor. And I think that is what the other agencies were meant for. They were in the periphery, that they can be called in at any time. And you know, EFCC was there, and they came out in their numbers, even when people tried to shade them. So I think you can give kudos in terms of the vote buying experiences. The election is quite an experience, but we have to now take lessons to correct it. We need explanation from INEC on what it is going to do about the polling units that never held election. I think we need to make people to understand, or INEC to understand. It's not enough that we say the population, the voting population, you know, is not relevant, you know, when you judge the totality of that election. The margin is not enough. But everybody's vote counts. Is a human being. When they say 1,000, it's 1,000 human beings on a queue. It's important. You cancel, you know, Jigawa election, I think it was Jigawa, they canceled, it is the 95 polling units. About more than 500,000 people were knocked off just like that. They say beavers malfunctioning. Like you were saying, you know, beavers malfunctioning does not stop an election. All you needed to do is to escalate to the technical people, and they come and rescue, and they have done that in several elections.
Okay. And we appreciate your contribution. Well, we are here with the president-elect in Nigeria, and I want to believe that, we should also rally around him and work with him presently, as the case may be. And when we come back from a break, I will ask Hamza to also let us know the way forward as it is now, because you have also said that, look, it's not necessary for anybody to step out of the streets to begin to demonstrate or something or protest anything. All right, then you will need to tell us exactly what you think we should be doing, especially the youths of this country who may have felt that they were shortchanged or something like that. You know, elections are never perfect, as we always know. And what we have seen is just one of those elections that have been held in Nigeria. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on NTA Network. You take a short break now. When we return, our conversation will continue. Okay, we are back again on the program, and I want to ask Hamzat Lawal let's say, how magnanimous, should the president-elect and his party be in victory, because I don't want us to continue to discuss the negative aspect of this, because there are also positivities, what has happened. The fact lessons have been learned, according to NOB. So how should a winner lead a nation that is pained by the process of this election?
I'm really excited about what President Goodluck Jonathan-led committee is doing. Meeting every party involved, particularly the front runners, and as someone who has considered defeat in 2015, and also tell them about how Nigeria is more important than anybody's ambition and why it's important to remain peaceful, because the most important ingredient in our country and in our history is peace. So for me first, I think that the president-elect should have a meeting and a conversation with, his opposition. I'm not sure in what modality, but it's important for him to have this conversation. I read his speech and I watched his speech, and he said he wants them to work with him. But he needs to put this word into action. And hopefully he can build an alliance, some form of alliance, because each and every one of them who ran are first Nigerians before anything else. So hopefully he can get that done. But I also think that we need to set up an audit process. Let's even audit this process, because yes, we've agreed that there are some positive events, there are also some gaps. And mind you, there's still an election on March 11. So we must audit this presidential and National Assembly elections. And I think to audit this, INEC must understand that we must form an audit team where you have INEC officials, you have members of the Nigerian Bar Association, you have civil society, you have the media, you have organized private sector. And of course, you must take representative from people living with disability and also young people, where we can sit down together and look at the entire process, the value chain, audit it, and then provide a report that seeks to address some of these issues, but also strengthen the process as we go into the next cycle of election. And most importantly, also recommendation that would help us inform what will become the next amendment for the Electoral Act. But it's important for the president-elect at this junction to rally around people, particularly people that are aggrieved. Have reconciliative meeting, have meeting of national unity and dialogue, because he, as a president or as a leader, you're a leader of everybody, the good, the bad, the ugly, your opposition, people with you. So I believe if we can do this and have a government of national inclusion, or a government of what I call national cohesion. Because see, Nigeria has suffered we've really suffered in terms of even ensuring that there's some form of equity, fairness, and justice and integration. So hopefully, if the president-elect can have a government that represents the ideals of Nigerians, that represents our yearnings, and that also mirror what the society is and what demography is. See, so today you have over 60% of youth as the population. So again, the young people want to see a government that looks like them, or representative in government that looks like them. We have women who actually inform the outcome of this election. See, even if now we're upset because the results were not uploaded, but the people who decided the outcome of this election were women, young people, and people with disability. So what becomes their role in government, and how it informs governance, good governance, and deepening our democracy?
All right, Hamza, thank you very much. Some persons would argue that the way to address the concerns that you have raised, or to proceed with the implementation of the suggestions, would be to look at the fundamental issue of our electoral system. Electoral system. Part of the hurt and the deep pain that losers often feel in elections in Nigeria is the winner-take-all. Winner take all. 2007, after that election, that was 16 years ago, President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua called for a review. One of the terms of reference was proportional representation. So that it would not be because I like Hamzat, I don't like Kingsley, I like Ene, I don't like Kirian, I like Adeni. It will be by right. Because if you look, and I want to proceed that as a question to go to Professor Adeni. If you look at the votes that have been tallied, 8.8 to round it off for Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who's declared winner, almost 7 million for Atiku, and over 6 million for Peter Obi. 6 plus 7, that is 13 million. So 13 million votes go into the bin. And we conducted the National Assembly elections on the same day with the presidential election. Elsewhere, proportional representation, which has to do with the electoral system and even the system of how you choose your president, because you don't have a National Assembly that becomes an electoral college. So all the votes will count. That is to say, by proportion. That is to say, the percentage of the votes that you have, Peter Obi will be number 1 on the list of persons. Atiku will be number 1 on the list of PDP. So the proportion you get, that is the proportion you will take to the National Assembly. Single chamber. At the National Assembly, don't you see sometimes how the Knesset in Israel will be struggling to get a coalition of persons? And then when you form a government as of right. As of right. And if in some other constituencies or some other jurisdictions, the percentage of votes you get for an election also will entitle you to a cabinet position.
That's right.
So, Prof, why we're talking about it, because we keep saying, oh, let's paper over this and move on. The next round of election, we're still going to come back, and that is why you also see the desperation amongst the political class that INEC has been seeking to hedge against by introducing technology and all kinds of innovation. Is it time for us to actually sit down and say, hey, gentlemen, this system is not working for us? There are countries that use proportional representation. South Africa is one. Namibia uses it. Australia uses it. XY. Is it not time for us to begin to think about these fundamental issues that will form the bedrock of our electoral system and attenuate the gravity of loss that losers often feel in our politics?
Absolutely. I dare say that's a very fundamental issue you have raised. And I remember very clearly the build-up to this democracy, Professor Momori, as head of the Center for the Foreign Democratic Study, was very emphatic on it. That was when we were juggling with the kind of democracy we were going to adopt. Of course, we were coming from a presidential system background, and we knew we were headed for another presidential system background. But we were thinking about making it much more ingenious, much more, we were thinking of being a little more creative about it, so as to attenuate, like you said, or to mitigate the pains of losses from those who will probably be losing election. It's a continuing debate, and of course, it came in again in the period of Yaradua. How do we mitigate the pain of loss on those who are going to lose election? And how do we get winners to be much more magnanimous so that the losers can also be gallant in victory? It's part of, in defeat, it's part of our problem, no doubt. But again, we have to also tie it back to the nature of our political economy that privileges politics as a main source of wealth, governance as a main source of wealth. People become easily rich, going into government. In some other climes, some people deliberately avoid going to government because it's going to distract them from their riches. They don't see it as a source of wealth, as a source of comfort, or as the only way they think they can meet their material needs. But our political economy is still on that other side where you think government is always very, very lucrative. So it makes people a little more die-hearted, fighting for political offices. And of course, they just want to go for broke, insisting that they must be part of this process. So it's a continuing conversation, and I agree with you absolutely. But I do not know how much it is going to continue, other than maybe taking the concessionary, reconciliatory route on the part of the winner. Beyond just asking them to come and join you, there are probably ways in which you can make approaches. That's where the place of communication comes again. Communication is hydra-headed. It is octopodal. If you are not using words, you can use your body language. If you are not using your body language, you can use signals. And of course, appropriate choice of words matter in the circumstance. Then the moment you are talking, what word are you going to use? And that's why you may not know it alone. There are people around you whose experience, whose expertise you can leverage on to make sure you are spot on in terms of the additional, the appropriate, the right messaging. Right messaging is important in the times we're in now. No matter how pained people can be, there are ways in which you can talk to them, whether as individuals or groups, and of course they begin to think otherwise, even if they are probably thinking of doing something else, like resort to court. We all know, it has been said severally here, that we do not have any other nation in most cases, and of course you want things to work. And how do we make things work? It's It's a systematic, painstaking process of doing the right thing at the right time, not just in the physical, not just like you're building a house, but it's also in the virtual, the intangible, activating action and at the appropriate time. And you see things working for you. As a leader, for instance, you probably know next to nothing, because you probably may not know everything. You definitely cannot even know everything. But it's the quality of people that you surround yourself with that will determine, to some extent, the success that you're going to record at the end of the day. So I think there's a good future ahead of us, whether in the immediate circumstance or the long-term circumstance. But how we harness it, the action we deploy into the process will determine the outcome, as the case could be.
Okay, and so I would also think differently with respect to the issue of changing the system, the political system that we are using at the moment. When we adopted the presidential system in the 70s, I wouldn't know whether we took cognizance, of what it entailed to have a bicameral legislature, in form of representation and what have you. And, it boils down to the fact that it became so I wouldn't say complex, but very consuming in terms of finances. To run government in Nigeria had become a huge project in terms of adequate allocation of scarce resources to different sectors of our national life. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking about poor energy and perhaps even petroleum scarcity and the difficulty in buying them at the moment. So let me bring in Madam here once more. We're already here with the system. And like a prof said, it's a future conversation in terms of changing the system. Now that we're where we are now, I know that women will be expecting to be to effect the 5% affirmative in terms of representation in government. Are your groups, thinking that direction to say, look, this present government that will be coming in May to take cognizance of women's role in politics and be able to now give women a chance to effectively represent your gender in the incoming administration?
Yes, but let me say that when we started our agitation towards affirmative action, proportional representation was also what we were looking at, because if you look at a country like Kenya, with proportional representation, the parties are allowed to, nominate their people, and most times women, youth, and persons with disabilities will always benefit from that system. So I think we can also, start looking towards that direction again, towards getting inclusive governance. We are not just expecting, it's our right. It's our right because we got judgment. Judgment that says that affirmative action, Nigeria gender policy must be obeyed, even though it's been appealed, but we have not heard anything. So tactfully, I think the party is working towards honoring that judgment. And it's not just about women, it's also about persons with disabilities and the youth. Prior to the elections, we had a research that was conducted across the 36 states, and we came up with a gender inclusive document. And that document, we know there was a section where people will sign into the commitment clause. And this is just to say that, look, when we get into government or honor affirmative action, we know that definitely for get affirmative action, the party have talked about more than 35% for women and for persons with disabilities and the youth. We are going to hold them accountable. I will also move away from, just talking about what we desire as women. I want to see how we can change the system, running the presidential system, but at the same time, looking internally, how to reorganize INEC. My major concern is the resident electoral commissioners are appointed by the government. Some of them are partisan. And so some of these problems we are looking at today may have emanated from that system, because if I am a party person, I'm expected to protect the interest of my party, and I will not consider the costs on the nation. So I think going forward, sir, let's have a conversation on what can we do to rebuild INEC, to recreate INEC, so that, like what they have in Ghana, just Ghana here. In Ghana, once the chairman is appointed, the commissioners are appointed, they take responsibility to appoint the regs. So the regs will be under them, and they will take instructions from them. But as it is, even when INEC chairman, that's what I'm saying, I feel for INEC chairman, he walked around the clock to see that he will give us a very wonderful election. Unfortunately, this is what is turning out. So, because you cannot even control your reg. You give instructions, reg is taking instructions from where he was appointed. So this is a very huge problem for us.
I would like you to comment on this, because earlier in the week, today's Wednesday already. Yeah, I think it must have been on Monday when we started the review of the presidential and national assembly elections. We talked about the competencies. We talked about capacity of INEC and its commissioners, its regs and its admin staff and all that. So that, because if you are running a complex system, you ought to have this. And here we are, Ebere Ifendu is raising a very critical point to say we need to look more closely into the appointive system for regs and what they do and from whom they take instructions. You can say there is a line of communication from headquarters downwards, but what happens? I mean, if the regs or the state offices don't perform well, then we have some of these glitches that could then, of course, raise cause tension and all that. Is it time for us to begin to look more closely into how we appoint, for instance, regs?
I think it is time to look at that, because the independency of INEC itself, they say independent National Electoral Commission. It's not independent. It's dependent, because for you to have your staff that are supposed to deliver and you hold them accountable, they are appointed by somebody else. You don't give them any dependency. Any independence, a kind of a nature that can lead to accountability. There's so many, if you look at the formation of INEC, it's like loyalty is to different directions. So what are you, who are those that are actually, they are monitored? You have INEC as a commission, you have the police, you have DSS, you have all of that. Who are they reporting to, or who is in control of INEC itself? So it is not, independent. It is time for us to really start thinking, like my sister had said, that we give the independence to themselves, so that they can appoint the regs that will be responsible. You remember the issue of the Nigerian civil society and the regs appointment. Once they bring in the list, we look at it, we say, even on the current regs, those who were either party who had carried cards and all of that, and we went on protest. We protested. There's so many things happening that we protested, and the thing is still working. If you want to look at even the CBN governor, who was a party carrier and is effective, the CBN governor's store is where you house the sensitive materials of INEC. And then he is also the umpire, it's so many strands of the election, comes from the CBN as well. We told the president, we have no personal issues. If this is the person that you want, it must be non-partisan. We stated that. When Loretta Onoche was the name was put forward, we said no, she is partisan. Of course, she got a job, and she got the NDDC. When she got that, somebody came to me and said, so what do you say to this? I said, congratulations to her. That place is okay, but INEC office is not okay. But there are so many people that are not okay that this thing has gone there. You were at the peace accord. The rhetorics of the spokespersons, the peace committee chairman noted to tell you that the peace committee is not just looking at, is not just signing accord, but they're also following. They noted that the spokespersons broke the rule by 44%. The presidential candidates broke the rule by 18%. This is not a lawless country. And so if we are talking of coming together, principals must take responsibility, complete responsibility for what happens to them. I think Nigerians, the sadness of Nigerians is because we were high up there. We believed, we worked hard. Many nights, many of us, if you see our eyes, they are bulging. And all of you, you have not slept for a beautiful Nigeria. Yeah. And it's like we were taken high up there and we were flattened. Now we have to go back to our constituency, you know, to say what's going on. How do we move from here? When money has been put, we all pay taxes, heavy taxes that we're paying. And now the tax, the money, follow the money. You have to go and follow the money now. We have to follow what INEC has spent on the basis of we need to appraise what INEC has done. Yeah.
And a new Nigeria is possible.
It's possible, yeah.
A new Nigeria is possible.
Yeah, yes. Yes. And let's hear more of that from Hamzat Lawal now as we are rounding off this edition of the program. The way forward.
Well, we must remain peaceful. I can understand people's grievance and agitation, but my advice is we're not a lawless country. Sadly, we're a country without consequence, because if there were consequences, people will understand that loyalty first is to country, not to an individual or a group of people or any party. But we must rise. We must rise to the occasion as young people and remain peaceful. Please do not take arms against the state. Nigeria must remain peaceful with law and order. And I urge our security agencies who are overstretched, because a lot of them have not slept since before even elections. Exactly. I urge them to keep a watch and keep us peaceful. Thank you.
Keep us safe and sound. Thank you very much, Hamzat Lawal, co-convener Not Too Young to Run Movement and Chief Executive Connected Development Code. Thank you for being our guests on Good Morning Nigeria today. Ebere Ifendo, President Women in Politics, we appreciate you. Thank you for your comments and suggestions. We also would like to thank Professor Abiodun Adeneye, who is Deputy Dean, School of Postgraduate Studies at Baines University. Of course, it's in the Department of Mass Communication there, where at some point he was previously head of department. Prof, thank you for your insight. And last but not the least, we want to appreciate NLB, convener of Nigeria's Civil Society Situation Room and country director of Action Aid. So, that's it for us on Good Morning Nigeria today. Tomorrow is another day, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Look after yourselves. I'm Kingsley Osandalo.
And I'm Nigerian. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow.